My name is Jerry Dietrich, Public Participation Specialist for the Department of Toxic Substances Control, also known as DTSC. The purpose of this webinar is to introduce you to the lead-acid battery recycling facility investigation and cleanup program, which we also call the LABRIC program, and the CNS battery lead company site, which we call the CNS battery site. On behalf of the department, we thank you for joining us. Slide 2. Thanks. As glad as we are that you're all here, we understand that some people may not be able to join us. So for that reason, we're going to record this webinar and post it to DTSC's LABRIC webpage for later viewing. During this meeting, your audio will be muted and to avoid any background noise on the recording. The chat is set up for one-way communication to provide a stationary place for us to share information with you, such as emails, phone numbers, and live clickable links. Rest assured, there will be opportunity for questions and comments. Due to our limited time together, we may not be able to get to everyone's comments or questions on this webinar, but we will provide you with our contact information so you can connect with us afterwards and we'll respond to you directly. Thank you for your patience and your understanding. Slide 3, please. Presentation slides for this meeting are available on DTSC's EnviroStore database. We'll be providing a direct link in the chat, but if you need to type it in, the database is located at www.envirostore.dtsc.ca.gov. You'll enter the ID number 60002773 and click on the site name that pops up. It will say LABRIC/CNS battery and lead. That will take you to the right place. Once you're there, navigate to the Community Involvement tab where the slides are posted along with all the documents related to this site. For questions from the media, please contact Sandy Nax from our Office of Communications at sanford.nax@dtsc.ca.gov. Slide 4, please. Our meeting begins with an introduction of our presenters, followed by presentations on DTSC's LABRIC program, an introduction to the CNS battery and lead company's facility background information, and its eligibility for accessing and using money from the lead-acid battery cleanup fund. That money can be used for site investigation or evaluation as well, and we'll also share the plan for the investigation evaluation. After the presentations, I'll cover the public notice, public comment period related to this site, and access agreements. The remainder of our time will be open to questions and comments, and our closing will include information on how to contact the LABRIC program team for any questions that we may not be able to get to tonight. I now invite our LABRIC program team members to join us for their introductions. Slide 5, please. Our first presenter is our LABRIC program supervisor, Yujia Jin, out of the Sacramento Regional Office. Yujia is a supervising hazardous substances engineer, and she's been with DTSC for about 8 years. Slide 6, please. Our second presenter will be John Ross, the CNS battery site project manager, who is a hazardous substances engineer. John has been with DTSC for about 3.5 years and is also at the Sacramento Regional Office. At this time, we'll begin our first presentation by Yujia Jin. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you for attending the webinar today. I would like to start my presentation by sharing DTSC's mission. The mission of DTSC is to protect California's people and the environment from harmful effects of toxic substances by restoring contaminated resources, enforcing hazardous waste laws, reducing hazardous waste generation, and encouraging the manufacture of chemically safer products. DTSC's mission includes protecting people who are potentially exposed to contamination caused by the operation of lead-acid battery recycling facilities. Excuse me. CNS Battery and Lead Company was a lead-acid battery recycling facility. Slide 8, please. I will describe the LabRIG program site process, including background information on DTSC's LabRIG program and the California legislation, which authorized and directed the creation of the program. The LabRIG program was created by DTSC to implement the Lead-Acid Battery Recycling Act of 2016, which we will call the Act from now on. The Act provides the legal framework for our mission to identify and clean up areas contaminated by the operation of lead-acid battery recyclers. This legislation calls for fees of $2 imposed on dealers and manufacturers of lead-acid batteries for each battery they sell at retail to a person or to a dealer, wholesaler, or distributor. It should be noted that the largest number of these batteries are automobile batteries. These fees are placed into the lead-acid battery cleanup fund, or the fund for short. The LabRIG program is authorized to use monies from the fund to perform a limited number of specific activities. These activities involve two major components. One, the investigation or evaluation of area reasonably suspected to have been contaminated by the operation of a lead-acid battery recycling facility, and two, the cleanup of areas contaminated from a lead-acid battery recycling facility, as well as other response actions. In order for an area to meet the requirements for using monies from the fund for investigation or evaluation, two primary threshold questions must first be evaluated. One, is the facility a lead-acid battery recycling facility within the definition provided in the 2016 Act and subsequent legislation? Two, is there an area of the state that is reasonably suspected to have been contaminated by the operation of that facility? Slide number 9, please. LabRIG program process begins with identifying potential lead-acid battery recycling facilities using relevant search criteria. For example, secondary smelter, lead smelting in various databases. Once a site is identified, it undergoes a site screening process, during which staff will review available evidence to determine eligibility for use of monies from fund for investigation or site evaluation. If the site is determined to be eligible for fund use, it will be prioritized for investigation or site evaluation. Once investigation or site evaluation is complete, DTSC will review the investigation results to determine whether the contamination is attributable to the lead-acid battery recycling operation. If the answer is yes, the site will be determined to be eligible for fund use for cleanup. If the answer is no, and there is existing contamination on the site, DTSC will refer the site to appropriate agency or program. This brings us to the main purpose of this webinar. We want to provide you with the information that explains why CNS battery was chosen for screening and why it is being investigated. Now I'm going to hand it over to CNS Battery Project Manager, John Ross.
Thank you, Yuji. So just so everyone is familiar with where we're talking about, here's a map showing the location of where CNS Battery operated. It's located at 860 Risk Lane, also known as 5th Street in West Sacramento, as shown in the outlined area on this map. The site is currently known as Sacramento Stucco Company and is in a commercial area known as the Bridge District. It consists of 2.86 acres, about 1/4 mile southwest of the Sutter Health Baseball Park. Slide 11, please. Let me share a little history about this site. Before CNS Battery operated at the site, Morris P. Kirk and later its subsidiary Smelter Supply Company operated at this site for 21 years, from 1952 through 1973 as a battery recycler. Then CNS Battery operated at this site for 5 more years, from 1973 through 1978 as a battery recycler. CNS Battery recycled up to 6,000 batteries per week at this site. CNS Battery spilled or dumped battery acid on the ground, and they also melted lead and poured lead ingot molds. Cal OSHA permanently closed the site in 1978 because of repeated worker safety violations. Slide 12, please. After CNS Battery closed, soil samples were taken and heavy metal contamination was found both on-site and off-site. Lead levels of up to 219,000 parts per million were found off-site near a lead melting pot. Keep in mind that the acceptable level of lead contamination for commercial or industrial properties is 500 parts per million, and for residential properties, it's 80 parts per million. Numerous cleanup activities occurred between 1979 and 2011. However, some contamination on-site was never cleaned up, and it's uncertain if there are areas around the site that may still have contamination present. Slide 13, please. Sacramento Stucco has owned and operated at the site since 1995. They moved their operations to another location in West Sacramento, and the historic CNS Battery site is currently mostly vacant. It should also be noted that the site is covered with buildings, warehouse, or concrete. There aren't any bare soil areas. Slide 14, please. Based on our research, the LABRIC program has found that CNS Battery is eligible for use of money from the fund for site investigation and evaluation. Based on this information, the LABRIC program began its investigation on May 25th of this year. The summary of information that the program used to determine the eligibility is available for public viewing. We call it a screening report. And Jerry will provide the webpage and location of the screening report on a later slide. Slide 15, please. Since it's not certain if there is contamination around the site, DTSC will lead an investigation to take samples at the site and areas within a quarter mile of the site. This slide shows the CNS Battery site and the 1/4 mile investigation area contained within the circled area. DTSC has hired a contractor to take on-site and off-site soil samples with depths of 6 inches, 12 inches, and 18 inches. Groundwater samples will also be taken at on-site and off-site locations. After taking the samples, the contractor will backfill the holes with soil to bring the area to pre-construction surface conditions as much as possible. Every attempt will be made to minimize disruptions to normal everyday activities in this area. You may see contractor and DTSC representatives with equipment in the area during this time. The soil and groundwater samples will be sent to a laboratory for evaluation. After the samples are analyzed, we will look at the data to determine if there is any contamination. If contamination is found, we will need to determine whether that contamination was caused by battery recycling from CNS Battery. If the contamination was caused by the operation of CNS Battery, then the LABRIC program can use fund money to clean up that contamination. If the contamination is from another origin, then fund money cannot be used to clean up the contamination. Instead, DTSC will refer the site to the appropriate agency or program. At this time, I'm going to hand the presentation back over to Jerry. Slide 16, please.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Gia, for all the information in your presentations. It's certainly a lot. Now that we've covered the sampling process, let's talk about access for sampling. For parcel owners whose property we would need to sample, DTSC is required to obtain their permission. DTSC uses an access agreement form signed by the parcel owner to allow DTSC staff and contractors to go onto the property and obtain a soil or groundwater sample. DTSC mailed the access agreements to certain parcel owners who were identified for sampling. None of the parcels we identified are homes or other residences. We mailed these access agreements on June 6th with postage paid return envelopes. If parcel owners would prefer to email the sign form back, you can email it to me at jerry.dietrich@dtsc.ca.gov, and we'll get that into the chat for you. Property owners who provide the signed access agreement form will be contacted by DTSC to coordinate when the sampling can take place and where on the property the sample can be taken. Soil samples will be taken at 6, 12, and 18 inches deep, and native and clean soil will be used to fill in the space. Your property will be restored to the condition it was found, and you and your representative are more than welcome to monitor the sampling activities from outside of the work area for safety. Slide 17, please. And like I said, we have covered quite a bit, so we encourage you all to visit the DTSC LabRIC Investigation Sites page. There you can access public notice, announcing DTSC's intent to initiate the investigation and site evaluation on and around the CNS battery site. There's also a link to the CNS battery EnviroStore page that has the presentation slides and the CNS battery screening report. The web address is www.dtsc.ca.gov/LabRIC-investigation-sites. You can also view these documents in person at the DTSC Sacramento Regional Office. You'll need to contact Chua Her at 916-255-4159 to schedule an appointment. And again, we're putting all this in the chat for you. When DTSC publishes a public notice, there is sometimes a period of time set aside for the public to review the publicly available information about the site and send DTSC any comments that they want to about the site. We call this a public comment period. So the public comment period and the public notice for CNS battery does include a public comment period. This is from May 27th, 2022 through August 25th, 2022. All comments must be postmarked or received by close of business on August 25th, 2022. Next, we'll go over where to send your public comment. Slide 18, please. Public comments or questions about the public comment period may be submitted to me, Jerry Dietrich, DTSC Public Participation Specialist for the LabRIC program. You can send your comments to me by mail at 8800 Cal Center Drive, Sacramento, California, 95826, or by email at jerry.dietrich@dtsc.ca.gov. Again, we're posting all this in the chat for you. And a reminder, all comments must be postmarked or received by close of business on August 25th, 2022. Slide 19, please. So we are now at the Q&A part of this webinar, and we'll ask our presenters to turn their video on. There are 3 ways that you can ask a question. If you joined us online, you can use the hand raise feature on your Zoom toolbar. If you joined us by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And if you want to just type your question into the Q&A, I can read it out loud for you. The Q&A box icon is at the bottom of your toolbar as well. I do encourage everyone that's on the call to ask your question. You can also ask your question anonymously if you prefer. We covered a lot of information. We want to make sure that everything is clear, that you have the information that you need, that you understand the access agreements and why it's important. I don't see any hand raised, and I don't see any questions in the Q&A. I don't want to assume that we got everything perfect, so I really encourage you to ask a question. I did see your hand go up, Diane Richard, so I'll go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yes. Could you go through again what DTSC will do with the information that you obtained from the investigation and the sampling?
I can answer that. So, the sampling, all the samples will be sent to a laboratory, and those samples will be analyzed, and the results will be given to DTSC. And once we get those results, then DTSC would then make a determination on whether or not there was any contamination. If there was contamination, then we would need to do one of two things. We would need to either attribute the contamination to the operation of operations at CNS Battery, or we would determine that it was not attributable to CNS Battery. So those are the two different ways that if there is contamination, that we would handle those particular circumstances.
Does that answer your question, Diane?
I guess I have a follow-up question,
Go ahead.
and that would be concerning if contamination is found that is a result of CNS Battery's operation, what would be required for that to be eligible for cleanup of the property through this program?
So if the contamination was caused by the operation of CNS Battery, then funds from the LABRIC fund can be used for the cleanup of that contamination.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? We have set aside this time for you all to go ahead and get all your questions answered. If you feel like you don't have a question right now or you want to work on your question, you can email us later. Also, if you want to just type in your question, like I said, you can do it anonymously if you don't want your name attached to your question. And I just want to go back to Diane to make sure that that your question was answered fully.
It was. I do have another question though, and that would be the timeline for receiving the samples and when a cleanup plan or the cleanup would actually is anticipated to take place for any of those that are eligible for the LABRIC program.
So I can answer that question, Diane. So we anticipate that first we'll have the contractor develop a work plan, which will happen this summer. And we expect that either later this summer or early fall, we would begin the sampling process. And then once the samples have been, all the samples have been taken, well, and let me also just say that a lot of the time could be spent obtaining access agreements from some of the parcels in the area. We don't know how many access agreements we are going to receive, so it may take a while for us to receive enough access agreements that we can do a thorough investigation. But once we have completed the sampling, and it could take a few months for the samples to be analyzed and the results given to the contractor, and then they would develop a report that basically lays out what the results are, and at that point we would then determine what our next steps are. I hope that answered your question.
Yes. Are you okay with that, Diane? Or do you have a follow-up question? Go ahead.
I do. So I didn't hear any timeframes. I know that one of the materials that we received was indicating that it was 2024 before these samples could be analyzed and the data taken. Is that still the timeline that you're operating on for having the information that you need to determine whether it's eligible for LABRIC?
That's probably our best estimate at this time. Yes, that's correct.
And if I may, I know you have other questions. If I may ask one other question.
Of course.
Great.
What are the requirements for eligibility for funding from LABRIC to remediate any problems that are discovered that are related to CNS?
John, do you want me to answer that question?
Sure, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Yuji. I can answer that question. Basically, it's we just, I think John mentioned a little bit earlier. We just have, there are two questions we have to answer. Is CNS a lead acid battery recycling facility? Second is the area. Sorry, let's step back. Basically, we have to show that the contamination is attributable to the lead-acid battery recycling operation. That's the basically is, if we can show that, then we can use the lead-acid battery cleanup fund to clean up the contamination.
Thank you, Jim.
Does it answer your question, Dan?
So are there any properties that are not eligible for funding, even though they might be contaminated from the CNS property?
We are not sure yet. That's the purpose of the investigation.
So any property, regardless of zoning or ownership, would be eligible for funding if the studies show that it was a result of the CNS battery operation. Is that correct?
That's a good question. That's a little bit complicated question for us to answer right now. So we can set up a follow-up call to talk about that.
And I guess the reason, one of the other comments I would make is that the Bridge District is in fact a mixed use area, right? So it's residential, office, retail. It is purposely designed to be a mixed use area. So that's something I wanted to point out. I know it was referenced that it was a commercial area.
Yes, thank you. We're aware of it, actually. Yeah.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you so much. And again, if you have follow-up questions, go ahead and raise your hand again. We're here to spend this time with you. In fact, I think I saw another hand go up and then down again. I'm hoping that means that you got your question answered. If not, we'll move on. Jennifer Hartman King, go ahead, ask your question, please. Your mic is enabled. You can unmute. If you're talking, we can't hear you. Maybe check your microphone setting. If you're on your laptop, you can click the up arrow on the mute icon and it'll tell you if you have a microphone setting on, the right setting. Or you can type it into the Q&A. It seems like you're having a problem with your audio. We'll give it a minute. Try that. Okay. I'll leave it unmuted. We'll go on to see if there's anyone else that has a question. Again, the Q&A is available for anonymous questions. If you want to just ask a question generally, you can also email us. I have my email open. But maybe what I'll do too is I'll just go ahead and unmute everyone. I feel like if we have just few people, we could spend some time just having an open dialogue. I'm going to go ahead and allow everyone's audio. If you don't have any questions directly, that's fine. We could use this time to maybe just talk about like, how was, the presentation for you? Did you feel like you had adequate information? Go ahead and chime in if you want. Is there information we could have covered more thoroughly? We did get some good questions from Diane. Thank you. I still see your hand up, Jennifer. I am unmuting you. I'm not sure if you're trying to talk, but you're able to unmute at this time. And again, anyone who wants to just have a comment, it doesn't have to be a question. If you just have a comment that you want to share about your thoughts about the program, about LABRIC, about DTSC, everyone's microphone is enabled. You can unmute and make your comment or ask a question. We have set this time aside for you all. We know that engagement is important. We want to make sure that we're engaging with you appropriately and adequately. We want to make sure that you get the information that you need. And again, if you don't have any questions now and you want to ask us later, you can email us. All right, seeing none. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay. Thank you so much. Again, we encourage you to contact us with any questions you have. For more information about the LABRIC program in general, you can visit our webpage at www.dtsc.ca.gov/LABRIC-program. If you have, again, an email, if you have a general question about LABRIC program, you can email the LABRIC program staff at labrf@dtsc.ca.gov, or you can call our message line at 833-752-2742. And any messages left on email or that voice line, we'll get back to you within 2 business days. To receive updates on the LABRIC program, subscribe to the LABRIC e-list at www.dtsc.ca.gov/DTSC-E-lists. Once you're there, you'll scroll down to the LABRIC program and click on the subscribe button. And again, we're putting all this stuff in the chat for you all. For questions specifically about CNS, about the CNS battery site, you can contact John Ross, DTSC project manager, at john.ross@dtsc.ca.gov. And again, for any media questions, please contact Sandy Nax at sanford.nax@dtsc.ca.gov. And for now, we'll say goodnight and please enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to leave the webinar open a little bit, so if you need to get some text out of the chat, you can do that.
Hey, Jerry, I see an anonymous attendee that asked a question. Do you see that in the Q&A box?
Thank you. Is the previous sampling test results available on the LABRIC site? So I think that previous sampling.
Yeah, so, and I can answer that question. So the sampling test results that were previously taken at the CNS battery site are available, and the results of those, I don't believe every single test is available, but the general information about what was found on site is available inside the screening report. So that screening report is available on our website, as well as all the references to that screening report. So pretty much everything that I think that you're asking for should be publicly available on the LABRIC website, on EnviroStore, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Question from Jennifer Hartman King. What constituents does DTSC plan to include in its soil and groundwater sampling?
And I believe what you're asking here is what are we going to be testing for? And so I hope that's what you're asking here. But basically, Jennifer, what we're going to be testing for is for heavy metals, including lead. Okay, good. Okay, so yes, we'll be testing for heavy metals as the primary test. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. I'm sorry we weren't able to get your audio working.
Exactly.
But this works. This is why we have Q&A too, so you can type it in. All right. that's all we have. Again, have a good evening. Thank you so much for your time. And we hope to talk to you soon. Again, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.